bizarre, mirthful debut novel, Leavened with Humor. That was Publishers Weekly. Fantastic first novel, The Family Family Fang packs a wallop. Lord, I can't read. Can't blow this up big enough. A delightful, odd story. Wilson has an infectious fondness for ridiculous and a good ear for muffled exasperation. I like this one. Inventive and hilarious. This is a complex psychological ground, and the 32-year-old Mr. Wilson navigates it with a calm experience that his tender age shouldn't allow. That's the Wall Street Journal. So, here's Mr. Wilson. Tell you about his experience.
Well, I'm honored to be invited, and thank you so much, Mike, for bringing me here. I'm a native of Franklin County. I grew up in Winchester. I went to school at South Junior High, graduated Franklin County High School in '96, and I could see Mr. Mason was my Little League baseball coach, who taught me so much about sportsmanship and confidence. So it's really wonderful to see these people, in Troy Wells, who takes care of me and my car and my house and my life insurance. So I thought I'd come here just to talk a little bit about the kind of weird experience of writing this little book and then it becoming a movie somehow, which is still hard for me to understand or believe. But I wrote the book. I have two little boys, 8 and 3, but when we had our first son, Griff, I owed my publisher a novel, and the thing that was on my mind constantly was just how terrified I was of being a parent for the first time, and how difficult it was trying to figure out how to be a good parent to this little boy who was depending on us. And it felt like every person in the world was telling us, this is exactly the way you got to raise the boy so that he'll be all right. And everybody had different advice. And I felt like if I didn't follow all of it, Griff was just going to be ruined, and it would all be our fault. And I couldn't stop thinking about that, of what it meant to be a parent. Having been a child and having had parents, I knew what it was like from that side, but it was interesting to be on the other side of it. So I wrote this little book about a very strange family. There's a lot of silliness in it, but at the heart of it is this idea of what does it mean to be born into a family. To you don't ask for it, but they're your family, whether you like it or not, and the ways that can both hurt and help us. So I wrote that book, and it got some decent reviews, and there was an article, and Nicole Kidman, the actress, who lives in Nashville, read the article and saw that the book was by a Tennessee author, and she was really interested in that, living in Tennessee now, and she got the book and read it. And I have a agent in LA who handles film and TV, which I never thought I would need. I didn't understand quite why he was my agent, but he was. And Nicole asked to talk to me, and we met in Nashville at a coffee shop, and it was just the most bizarre thing in the world to be standing in front of Nicole Kidman, who was beautiful and very kind. And I really thought that after that meeting, I thought, well, Nicole and Keith Urban and me and my wife are just going to be best friends now. I'm going to be hanging out at their house every weekend. That didn't quite happen, but she told me she wanted to turn it into a movie, and I was amazed. So I sold the rights to the book to her production company, and she said, I promise you it'll get made. And I have a lot of friends who are writers, and a lot of them have optioned their book for film, and all of them to a T said, nothing ever happens. They option all kinds of stuff, and it's just a lot of luck for something to go through. And but Nicole really stuck with it, and she got a guy to write the screenplay, and from that screenplay, this actor Jason Bateman decided he wanted to direct it. And then I'm on the phone with Jason Bateman in our little house in Swanee, talking to him about my book, and he had all these ideas for what he wanted to do with it. And little by little, I kept thinking, this this might actually happen. I can't believe this, but there might actually be a movie. And then they got the money together and they started filming in New York. They wanted to film in Tennessee because that's where Nicole lived, but tax credits, there was something about this, such a small budget that New York gave them these pretty great tax credits. So they went up there, and my wife and I in August 2 years ago went up to New York, and we sat in this crazy house that they had rented. This family had rented it to them, and they took every article of furniture, everything out of it, and then made it look as ugly as hell. Just wallpaper that looked so dirty. And it was the craziest thing, and I can't imagine letting my house be used for that. But they made this house that was where the family lived, and they we got to watch them film scenes, and we watched Nicole Kidman and Jason Bateman go through this scene, and I heard them saying words that I had written in my little basement office 4 years earlier in Swanee. It was just so crazy, and then the movie is coming out. The last night in Swanee they played it for people in the community, and I was there, and it was really amazing to see it and to be around all these people that I care about and who know me. And I don't know what, I think it's a very small movie. It's only going to be released in about 50 cities, I think. But, it's just, people ask me sometimes, like, did you ever imagine this? And I just thought you'd have to be an insane person to think that some little book that you wrote was going to be read by Nicole Kidman, and they were going to turn it into a movie, and it was going to be on the big screen. But it was a happy surprise, and I've just finished another book, and it's coming out next year, and I know deep down in my heart not to expect Nicole Kidman to make a movie. But now I feel like I got a taste for it. I want to turn Hollywood a little bit, but we'll see what happens. But I also, that's kind of my experience with the movie, and if anybody had any questions about it, I can tell you more about it. But the other thing is I teach at the University of the South up in Swanee, and I teach creative writing. So the one reason I kind of wanted to bring it up was the kind of idea of what creative writing does, and a lot of people, it's this artistic enterprise. Yes, like I make up stories, and I teach that to students. I teach them how to create a narrative, and people think, oh, well, how can this be helpful in the real world? And other than like bringing joy to people, like telling a strange story, and everyone loves stories, fictional stories. But for me, the thing that I'm trying to teach my students, because a lot of them are not going to become writers. They're engineers, and they're social scientists and environmental engineers, and so it's not that they're going to become writers, but what I want to teach them is you need to know how a story is made. You need to know all the elements: character, setting, and plot. And people think, oh, if you become a writer, you learn how to be a good liar. And part of that is true, but really for me, what I'm trying to teach them is you need to know how narrative works so that you'll know when other people are lying to you, right? So that the more that you know about how a story is put together, when somebody tells you something and that narrative is off, there's something wrong about it, you'll know to think more deeply about it, to question it, and to try and find out what the real story is. So that's what I try and do with my kids, and that's kind of what I think learning more about how narrative works is, that it teaches you not just how to understand when people are lying to you, but also it lets you go back into your own life and see what is the narrative, what's the story of my life, and where are the ways that I can go inside of it and make changes. If you think that your life is supposed to be this kind of arc that moves like this, then you try and figure out the ways that, oh, well, my life is actually doing a little U-turn here. What's the moment that made that happen? And how do I edit that and fix it so that it's moving towards the goal that I want to get at? And all that comes just from reading stories, thinking about stories, and then thinking about the stories that you would make up. I know a lot of y'all got to get back. I know y'all are working and busy, and y'all got to get out of here at 1. So I really don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy to answer questions or anything like that if you have any. Yes, sir.
What's your training for story writing?
So I went to Vanderbilt University after Franklin County High School, and while I was there, I was an English major and took a lot of creative writing classes with a man named Tony Early, who wrote a novel called Jim the Boy. It's a really beautiful novel of post-World War II Appalachia. And he taught me how to write. He taught me everything I knew about writing, and his main thing was a story needs to be simply told. You don't need a lot of irony, you don't need a lot of fireworks. It's a simple story at the root of it. And from that, I went on to graduate school at University of Florida, and I got my Master of Fine Arts, and that was 2 years of intense dedication to just writing every day, talking about writing, looking at other people's work. And from that, a Master of Fine Arts allows me to teach at the university level. And then there was all the training that came after school where I was trying to teach myself how to become a better writer. And the great thing about trying to learn how to write is there's about 1 million examples in the world. There's just a nonstop list of books that you want to read. And so every time I read a book, I was trying to figure out how can I utilize what this writer is doing and bring it into my own work. So I still do that. I mean, I'm still learning how to write to this day. Anything? Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious. Of course, everybody here knows all about this book because I gave them homework. They all had to read the book. I know everybody did. But I'm curious is after you see the movie and you wrote the book, how well did they adapt it? And were you surprised by the changes they made, or were you put off by something that the screenwriter did versus your?
Once they gave me the money, they could have done anything they wanted, and I wouldn't have said a word. But I was actually happy. They showed me the screenplay after this man, David Lindsay-Abaire, wrote it, and I thought it was fantastic. And there were actually parts of it that he had changed the novel, but I thought, oh, if I could go back and rewrite the novel, I would incorporate some of those elements. He did things that I thought, why didn't I see that? That would have been so much easier to tell the story that way. But it is different. It's different than the book. And one of those things people always say is like the movie is never as good as the book. But for me, I didn't care about that. I think a book is one thing and a movie is another, and they're very different. A book is what you can do in a book is you can get interiority. You can get inside the head of a character really easily. You just have their thoughts. And a movie can't do that. But what a movie can do that a book can't is that it can create a visual representation of the world so that you can see it. And in a book, you're left to your own imagination. So they're different, but I can still see my book in there, and I can hear lines that I wrote. But it is different. And I don't know, it didn't bother me. I thought it was neat to watch these really great artists take something that I made and make it into their own thing. I mean, that's what you want, is for them to make it their own. I didn't want them to just make a carbon copy of the book, because what would the fun be in that? So I thought they did great. Yes, ma'am.
So what is the name of your book that you're working on?
I've got a book coming out in January called Perfect Little World. And it's about a young woman who is pregnant, about to have a baby, and she joins this study, a kind of strange little scientific study to try and figure out how to raise children. You can see what my interests are when I write. It's all I care about is the connection of family. Flannery O'Connor said, stories are either about one of two things, money or family. And that actually does kind of work. I think that's true. And if that's true, then all I write about is family. I'm so interested in it, the ways that we're connected to people, the way that our actions affect other people. And if you think of family not just as your immediate family, but the people that you're connected to in your community, in the larger world, that's what really interests me, is this idea that we are connected whether we like it or not. So how do we figure out ways to take care of each other and not do damage to another person? And I'm slowly struggling with that as a parent, is how not to ruin my sons, but to be respectful of them, but try to teach them how to be good people. Which is why, growing up in Winchester, growing up in a small community, that was helpful for me to feel like that people who knew my parents would know me, and they would want to take care of me if I was in trouble because they knew who my parents were. So growing up in a small town has kind of affected my worldview.
There's an editor in Nashville, and you may know her, Margaret Wrinkle.
Yes.
Okay, she's been talking about you and
Yes.
your books, and and she mentioned you had a new book coming out, and
Yeah.
she really loves your writing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Really,
Well, that's you know, I'm trying to hold it together here and not just pass out from anxiety. But I'm a really shy person. I'm a really retiring person, and yet that's why I write, is because I can make this thing and send it out into the world, and I don't have to be there, but another person can read it and hopefully get some joy from it. And that's what's always appealed to me as a kind of shy person, is that I can make this thing, but I don't have to be there when people read it. Can you imagine? That would be the worst thing in the world. So it's much better this way. I could never be an actor or anything like that where people actually watch you while you perform. Yes, sir.
Let's say when you went to Vanderbilt, did you get a lot of help from the English department? You know, a lot of folks don't know that we got these famous guys called the fugitives.
Yes.
And were you given any encouragement by them, or did you study them, or who?
Well, going to Vanderbilt changed my life. And if you go to Vanderbilt and you're an English major, you're going to be steeped in the traditions of Southern literature. And my professor, my other writing professor, was Walter Sullivan, who was best friends with Robert Penn Warren. And he would tell us stories, and it was just so incredible that Walter Sullivan, who knew Robert Penn Warren, would just call him Red by his nickname. And I thought, this is a man connected to this tradition. So yeah, the English professors there taught me, you know, when I was at Vanderbilt, I read William Faulkner, Eudora Welty, Carson McCullers, Flannery O'Connor. They wanted us to know that there's this incredibly rich tradition of Southern literature and that we're connected to it. So yeah, my professors were wonderful. And if you know, and then it's just happenstance that I ended up teaching at Sewanee, where the fugitives, people like Alan Tate and Andrew Lytle, moved from Nashville into Sewanee and brought that literary tradition with them. So I feel like I got the best of both worlds at Vanderbilt and at Sewanee as far as the fugitives and Southern literature goes.
Do they still give emphasis on poetry and things like that?
They want you to be as well-rounded as possible. So yeah, we grew up, you know, when I wasn't just reading fiction, I was reading Robert Penn Warren's A Brother to Dragons, his book in verse. I read all kinds of narrative poetry, Robinson Jeffers. It was a great experience, and you know, it was hard coming from such a small town in Franklin County High School to go to Vanderbilt, but I made my way and it worked out for me.
Did you attend on scholarship?
I did, partial, but enough that it helped us defray the cost, which was considerable. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just have an observation. After reading the book, a lot of times when it's adapted to the movie, I always look in my mind, I'm thinking, the people that are actually playing these parts, do I approve?
Yes.
You know, did they, or was it cast for? So I want you to share, and I believe in this book that it was, and I would like you to share who the casted characters are and who the stars are that's actually playing the parts.
Oh.
At least the children and the father.
So the two main characters are a brother and sister named Annie and Buster, and that's Nicole Kidman and Jason Bateman. And then the father is a very cranky, crazy old man played by Christopher Walken, which was perfect. We met Christopher Walken in Toronto at the premiere. He was the strangest man. They put us in a room before the movie started, in this little room on a sofa, and I was eating popcorn next to Christopher Walken. And I thought, how did I get here? And the one thing, he would just say bizarre things, but he said, where are you from? And I said, Tennessee. And he goes, I made a movie in Tennessee once. Every man in Tennessee had a dog, and every dog was named Bear. And then he was just quiet. And then Leanne and I would just eat popcorn and try and figure out what the heck he was talking about. And then the mother is a Broadway actress named Marianne Plunkett, who has hardly done any movies. And she was wonderful. I thought they were incredible. And again, you know, you have an idea of who these people are in your mind when you write the book, but to see actual living people embodying those characters was really thrilling. Yeah.
How did you ever learn about a potato gun?
Oh, we shot potato guns. Yeah, we had a potato gun accident out in a rural area of Winchester with my friend Tony Petrachko. But yeah, it's just when you live, and I find this is changing as we have access to things with the internet and Amazon and all that. But when you grew up in a rural area, it was a really helpful thing as a writer because we didn't have anything. We didn't have access to, if we wanted to go to a record shop, it was in Nashville, or go see a movie, it was, you'd have to drive. And so we were left to make our own stories and to have our own fun and our own imagination. And when you live out in this rural area, you make stuff up. And so you're bound to find out how to make a potato gun if you're bored enough. So we did. Yes, sir.
In the larger community, Sewanee then, did John Meacham come to you for help when he was writing?
No, John Meacham can handle everything on his own. He is the golden boy of Swanee. But that is, it's wonderful to be at Swanee because there's also a literary tradition. There's a real history of people going on and doing great work in literature. So I feel really lucky to be there and to be a part of it. And when I'll be honest that when I grew up in the valley, I kind of hated Swanee. I didn't think much of the people on the mountain, but having lived there now and being part of that community, I feel really closely connected to it, and I feel welcome, and I feel like that it's really important that Swanee is a part of Franklin County, that there's Winchester, that there's Cowan, that there's all these places that to an outsider they would think, oh, this is just this one little county, but I don't think they realize how different from area to area this place can be, which I think is kind of wonderful. And, yes, sir.
I went online and I was looking for some information around the book, and I ran into the critics.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you deal with the critics, given that there were some that were just said it was awful,
Yeah.
and others saying it was wonderful, and
Yeah.
anything in between.
Well, you basically believe that the ones that say it's wonderful are correct. But no, I mean that's I think anytime you make something, you can't expect everyone to love it, and I think that's a real danger, is to believe that somehow your self-worth is wrapped up in what another person believes. I set out to write a book, and it's not perfect, but I wrote to the limits of my ability. I did everything that I could to make that a good book, and so in the end, I felt a sense of accomplishment because it did what I wanted it to do. And then when the critics come, of course, it's important for sales. You want them to like it, but you have to learn to deal with that criticism, understand if it's warranted, and then go back and absorb that. And when you write another book, you hope that you're better at it. So I don't like it when people say they hated the book, but I can understand it because I wouldn't expect anyone, every single person in the world, to love anything. But it hurts when someone says this is terrible and the writer's an idiot. But generally, when you find something that's critical of the book, I try to think like, are they right? And if they are, then I'll do better next time. But I love it when they say they like it. Yes, sir.
How long did it take you from the time the idea first hatched in your head to the time you had to finish?
So I had a 2-book deal with my publisher. I did a book of short stories, and I had a deadline, and I was writing this other book, and they hated it. So I had to throw it away, and I had a year and a half before the deadline. So I wrote it as fast as I possibly could. It probably would have taken me on my own time 3 or 4 years, but I did not want to give the advance money back. So I wrote it super fast. And it worked out. It was actually, having that deadline pushed me to think about the book and to work harder on it. But it was just a year and a half, really, of writing. And that is a thing, like I don't write every day. I know a lot of writers do, but I have kids. I want to play with them, and I want to be with my wife sometimes. So I don't write every day or even every week, but when I do write, I'm a fast writer. I can get a lot of pages. I've learned how to do that, to produce pages. Yes, ma'am?
When you write, are you secluded? Do you go, what do you do?
I wish I was secluded. No, the kids are always interrupting. They want me to help them with some toy, or they want to watch a video, but I try to find time, usually late at night. A lot of people work best in the morning, but my kids get up at 5. I can't get up much earlier than that, so I stay up late. So usually from around 11 to 2 is when I write.
you name your top 3 Southern writers living?
Top 3 Southern writers? Lee Smith, Fair and Tender Ladies. I think she's the kind of queen of Southern literature that's still alive. She's a really generous, incredible ambassador for Southern literature. A strange man named Paget Powell, who is the craziest Southern writer I know and one of the funniest. I'm trying to think of the other one. Maybe Ron Rash, who writes a lot about the Appalachian experience in a way that feels really authentic to me. And there's a real worry when you're Southern that there's a line from The Virginian, the movie, where it says, "Are you Southern?" and you say it depends on who's asking. And I think that is true, that a lot of outsiders have an idea of what the South is in a way that doesn't hold up. And you can read a lot of books that they create a kind of false sense of what the experience is. And so I think these 3 writers get at the heart of what it means to live in this region that's shaped by history, that's in some ways rural and shaped by agriculture, and yet speak to the richness of the human experience in these southern states. So yeah, I love them. Yeah.
You know Rick Bragg?
Yeah, I like Rick Bragg.
He
I
does your job at the University of Alabama.
Is that right?
He's just a great writer.
Oh, wow.
Bring the Alabama connection.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say it is, like I said, a real honor to be here, to be welcomed into the community, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.